Hmm. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We have some people still coming in from the waiting room, so we're just going to give it another minute or so here before we get started. See a couple more still coming in. A beautiful sunny day outside, a perfect day for a webinar.
That was a perfect day for golf.
Yeah, I guess that too. Too many leaves on the ground now, though. Okay, I think probably enough time for at least the people here at the start. So welcome again, everyone, to our webinar today. It is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October. So we like to do a cyber-themed webinar, certainly in October, hopefully to educate people on what's been going on in the cyber world and hopefully give you some tips and information to help safeguard yourself, safeguard your business. And this one has a little bit of a twist because we're adding in the AI component, which we've been seeing a lot more in the cyber threats that are coming out there. So with that said, we are just going to get started. So my name is Michael Shagru. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Pace Technical and one of the partners. And I'm joined today by Tyler Sanders, our CEO, and Rishwan Syed, our CTO. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
All right. I think we got some good stuff today. I recognize lots of friendly names on the list here of attendees today. So if you're a client of ours, thank you again for your business and your support. And if you're a business that we've met before, or if you've attended one of our webinars, welcome back. If you've never been here, just a super quick 20 seconds about us. You know, we're Pace Technical. We're a managed IT service provider. We've been in business over 20 years, managed IT support, managed IT security, managed cloud services. We're about 65 people in the company now. We've been an ISO 9001 business for the past 10 years and for the last 9 years, and we just got recertified last week. We've been a great place to work in Canada, currently supporting a little over 140 businesses. So look, if you've never had a conversation with us, we'd love to have a conversation. If you just want a second opinion about how things are managed, certainly your IT security, we'd love to have a conversation. And there'll be a means for you to contact us. We'll put that up, contact information up at the end of the webinar. As I mentioned, if you've never been to one of our webinars, welcome. Every webinar that we do, we post on our website so you can get access for free. You'll see we did one a year ago, also a cyber themed webinar. And all these webinars are accessible on our website for free. Just go to the pacetechnical.com website. Under the media dropdown, you'll see resources, then webinars, and you can click and watch any of these webinars for free. Even the cyber awareness training that we did last year still has a lot of good, relevant information. And we're going to try and switch things up just a little bit for this one here today with the AI focus. And lastly, just some housekeeping. Everybody's in listen only. The webinar is being recorded and we will be sending out access to the recording after the fact. We'll also post it on the website. Certainly during the webinar, you can ask questions, use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom or the top, well, depending on where it is on yours. I know Zoom just did an update. Who knows where anything is now. And lastly, we'll hopefully leave a little bit of time at the end. We'll try and answer some questions during the webinar, but we'll leave a little bit of time at the end to answer some more. So a quick look at the agenda we have today. One quick look at the cyber landscape. We're going to talk about the rise of the use of AI in cyber threats. And we hear a lot of misinformation out there. So we're going to try and debunk some myths that we've heard. and then some information on how to safeguard your business, as well as some steps for building a cyber smart team. And like I said, lastly, we'll end it all up with some Q&A. But to start, just to kind of test the waters here, we're going to throw up a poll question. I'm going to launch that right now. How prepared do you think your business is to defend against AI-powered cyber threats? Just trying to get a gauge on where people's comfort level is with, the means that you have in place, the tools, the process, whoever is managing your cybersecurity today. And we're just going to give it another 10 or 15 seconds here to get the last responses in. And it looks pretty much like I might have expected. Very good. All right, I think we have most of the people in here, so I'm just going to end it right now and share the results here. So it looks, well, what I would expect. The majority of people feel, somewhat prepared, but there's always that little bit of that feeling of, geez, are we doing everything? Do we have everything in place? Hey, it's good. 20% feels very prepared. That's a very good number, and also a good number that very few feel not prepared at all. So that's good, and it's a good starting point for us here today. So let's move on then. I like to bring up this slide and Robert Mueller, the former director of the FBI, because it was decades ago that he made this statement. There's only two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that will be. There is no 100% defense against cyber attacks and cyber crime. So look, we all have to be vigilant. We all have to do whatever we can to try and stop them. But taking the stance that, we're not going to get hacked. We're not going to be one of those companies. Maybe we're not targeted. You can't have those kind of thoughts. And we're going to show you why here in a minute. Let's look at some of the top cyber threats that we're seeing out there. Still, no surprise, phishing comes up right away. Still probably half of the attacks and breaches and things like that originate through some type of phishing. Someone is tricked into giving credentials or clicking on a link or downloading or whatever the case is. Phishing is still, one of the prime or the prime threat that's out there. And then phishing can lead to many other things, business email compromise, where somebody's credentials get phished and someone now takes over a prominent figure's email account and now starts sending what are basically legitimate emails, although coming from a criminal, sent to particular people in an organization. Usually they're studying the organization to find out who the players are, who the financial people are, and whatnot, using business email compromise to exfiltrate, get people to wire money that they shouldn't. Geez, in a lot of the cases, someone hasn't even compromised an email account, but uses spoofing by, tricking people into making it look like someone is sending a legitimate email. When you look a little further, you can see that it's not really the same or the correct email that it's coming from. Somebody is spoofing the return address and the display name on the email to make it look like a legitimate person. So with all of these things, there just has to be an extra means in place for checking, especially when it comes to any kind of financial transactions or whatnot. Still have to be very vigilant with that and have extra processes for confirming the identity of a person that's asking you to send money, wire money, or do any kind of a task or process. And then ransomware. Ransomware could come through phishing or through emails. It could also just come from a fraudulent or malicious website, a malicious download. That's why everyone still has to be vigilant about any links that are clicked on or any kind of things that are downloaded. Always have to be sure it's coming from a trusted source. And then there's human error. Obviously, the basis why anyone that's going for cyber insurance, every cyber insurance provider requires that you do some means of cyber awareness training for all of your staff, because human error is still a big threat. The majority of the time, it's not somebody acting maliciously. It's just one of your workers that, I don't know, doesn't know any better, doesn't look close enough, clicks on something they shouldn't, download something they shouldn't, or whatnot. But human error is still definitely a threat. And then now what we're going to focus a bit on today are the AI threats. So let's talk a little bit about AI. I mean, I don't know about the people on the call here and your businesses, but we've really embraced and leveraged AI within our business. We're big Microsoft users, obviously, and we leverage Microsoft Copilot. Almost every meeting that we have internally in our company, we run on Teams, and we leverage Copilot to record those meetings, to create written transcripts of everything that was said during the meeting, including at the end of it, Copilot will summarize the meeting and say, here's everything that was said, here's all the to-dos that came out, and here's who's responsible for those to-dos. It's a fantastic tool. And we're also leveraging Copilot, ChatGPT, even to help with marketing tasks, structuring, whether it's emails, web pages, social media content. I'm sure everybody on this call has at least tried it out and dabbled with it a little bit. So you can see how AI is a great thing and it can really, really help a business. However, there's unfortunately a dark side here, because AI is also helping revolutionize the cybercrime industry and really helping cyber criminals do their jobs better. I mean, the obvious first one, helping cyber criminals write convincing emails for phishing attacks. In the old days, God forbid, someone where maybe English isn't their first language had to try and structure a phishing email. And, 20 years ago, a lot of those were really easy to spot. You could see the grammar mistakes, misspelling, and whatnot. Fast forward another 5 years and, they started using spell checks, even grammar checkers to help them with their grammar. But now forget all that. It's super easy. They can just use an AI tool and just tell it what the, the topic or theme of the email should be. But to help them, I mean, they have their own tools specifically for this, to write a phishing email or create a whole phishing campaign for them with multiple emails. So that's definitely one thing that's been helping them, and this isn't a brand new thing. This has been going on for a while. Also, generating malware code. No longer do cyber criminals have to be software engineers and understand coding and scripting. AI can generate all that for them, and they have these tools that within minutes they can create fictitious web pages that look very, very real. And the scripting and the downloads and everything that goes along with these malware campaigns. The next point there, AI, it's crazy to think, but can be taught to listen on phone conversations and learn and depict keystrokes that are happening. If, let's say you have a phone conversation with somebody and tell them to go to a web page and type in their email and password, and AI can pick up on those keystrokes to try and guess users' credentials or passwords. And the last one, and I'm going to show you some examples of it, that AI can help with the development of deepfakes. And if you've never heard the term or not sure what it is, we'll speak about it in a minute here. But let's look at some recent trends that we've been seeing. So we already started talking about it, the use of AI in phishing campaigns that's being highly leveraged by these criminals. So as an interesting thing, as we were creating the content for this webinar, we thought it might be fun to do a live demo of let's say ChatGPT writing a structured phishing email. So when we tested it out, it turns out that ChatGPT does have a conscience and wouldn't create this phishing email for us. It refused to do it. But when we asked it to give us an example, it obliged and gave us an example. And if you were to look at it here, it's pretty good looking example of a phishing email, although probably wouldn't work as well here in Canada. We don't have CVS Health. Maybe we would have it rewrite it for Shoppers Drug Mart, let's say. But the other thing then that they can do on top of this, if they wanted to get more targeted and make it more of a spear phishing campaign, if they were going after an individual business or an individual person, they can use AI to leverage and scan social media accounts, profiles, websites, to try and uncover as much personal and or business information now to get very, very targeted into who they should be sending these campaigns to and exactly what they should be saying in there.
It's interesting also, Mike, going back to that example, if you look at the bottom, how it's identifying how convincing phishing emails can be and how to start to look out for some of the recognizable traits that they may contain to help protect yourself. So going back to ChatGPT having a conscience, well, there it's making recommendations on how to identify phishing type of email campaigns.
I have to say, it actually went above and beyond. Not only did it refuse to help us write a campaign, it also, gave us some tips on how to identify one. So good on ChatGPT. So I mentioned the name deepfake. So me and Tyler were talking about it earlier. It sounds like an NFL football term, right? Where, the quarterback tells the wide receiver, hey, go deep. Wait. Don't go deep. Fake going deep and go short, and I'll give you a short pass. Sounds like that would work, right? I guess maybe it isn't an NFL term, seeing that it's in our cybersecurity webinar. So here's what it is. And I'll have to say, a year ago, I didn't even know what deep fakes were. Probably most people didn't, but it's been around for a while, actually. So basically, deep fakes are images, videos, or audio, which were, edited or generated using AI tools. And it helps make it look like it's a particular person. I mean, it could be also made to be a non-existent person, but generally it's used to try and, take people that you would normally recognize, but change what they're doing, what they're saying, or whatnot. A lot of times using scams, hoaxes, even pornography, election manipulation, social engineering. And the interesting thing here is as much as it can be used for these kind of illicit purposes, it also does have legitimate purposes. And I think this technology has existed probably in the TV and film industry for a long time when they're editing, film and whatnot. And I mean, it's also the basis for animated video as well. Rishwan, did you have something on this one?
Yeah, I mean, and interesting enough, this technology is actually in use right now as we are speaking on this webinar. This blue background people see behind us, that is essentially the same technology. It's albeit a little simpler, but there is, a wall behind me, there's a painting behind me, there's my chair, and all that furniture is there, but you can't see it regardless of where I move. That black blurring is exactly that, right? The AI in Zoom recognizes that I am the person that it needs to focus on, and anything in the background needs to be removed. So even though I'm wearing a jacket that is almost the same color as the background, it still knows as I move, where to move the jacket. It's the same technology. They have been using it to replace, the faces of stuntmen, where the actual actor is more realistic. In the old movies, you sometimes couldn't see their face when they were doing the big stunt. Now you can actually see that actor doing that face. That's really where this technology, that's where the investment came from. It was never meant to be used for this illegal purposes, just that anytime you bring in new technology for legitimate purpose, somebody uses it for illegal purposes. So now that the processing power was the main thing, right? It's only Hollywood could afford it because it needed these supercomputers. Laptops have so much power that they didn't have before. B, cloud has just made everything so much simpler that you can now, rent that supercomputer, whatever it is. You don't need it, that level of computing power, as in that expensive computer power. The cheaper versions of cloud computers have that power just built in. And right now, whatever you're seeing in this background, the image behind me, Zoom can see that. It is being processed on the Zoom cloud side where you're seeing these backgrounds. Right now, if I was to go and demand that Zoom provides me this copy of my video, they'd be able to see, you'd see the exact background, whatever I have here.
Yeah. And just so everybody on the call knows, we are not cyber criminals posing as legitimate webinar hosts. So this is not a deep fake. But let's look at a couple of examples. If you were to Google deepfake, you'll see, geez, hundreds or thousands of examples. Yeah. But here's a couple that when I was just doing some searches, poor Taylor Swift. Okay, poor, multi-billionaire Taylor Swift, but still, this does exist where, people are exploited. She's even in, when this one came out, like they were, depicting Taylor Swift in pornographic images, putting her image on top of these. And BC introduced the Intimate Images Protection Act just for this reason when this came out. Another example that I found, this was a guy in Texas that basically took Joe Biden's voice, ran it through AI, to create an audio message, and he inserted the audio message into a robo telephone dialer that dialed and sent this message to thousands and thousands of people. And the message was basically, this happened during the primary elections, and the message basically said, "Hey, this is Joe Biden. I want to thank you so much for your support, but I just want to let you know this isn't the important election, so don't worry about going out to vote today. I don't need your vote now. Stay home. When I really need you is in November, so don't worry about this one." So just an example of how something like that can be used to try and manipulate the outcome of an election. And speaking of elections, I also came across this website that, I don't know if it's a student or whatnot, at UC Berkeley created this web page literally just dedicated to deepfakes associated with the upcoming presidential election in the US. And let me tell you, it's a very, very long web page, lots of different examples of deepfakes going on there.
Do we have some examples we can share with the webinar audience just on how they may get tricked by deepfake attacks?
Yeah, essentially anybody, right? You can superimpose their face on a conversation. Like I said, like the processing power didn't exist before. Cloud has made it so much easier. Teams for the longest time had this, I forgot what the functionality is, but you can actually replace yourself with an avatar, and the avatar would do that. iPhone has that functionality now, where whatever voice message you send, you can have an avatar mimic your exact images. It's the same level of processing that is required to, have an avatar and replace it with a human's face. So I essentially, I can have be the one talking, but you could see Tyler's face doing the talking, and I'm impersonating the company's CEO. Everything that I say, every word that comes out of my mouth, every facial expression, before it reaches you, it is replaced with Tyler's voice, with Tyler's facial gestures. AI can be taught to learn, any videos, maybe went to some wedding where he cracked some jokes, or, was a little sad about something. All those facial expressions, we can train the AI, looks at it, how would Tyler behave, a left smirk, what it would look like. And any facial gesture I could do, you could see basically Tyler presenting that instead of me. So it's the same thing, like your company CEO. You could feel like, okay, I'm talking to my CEO right now. That's where you have to be a little bit more careful. Like, why is my CEO asking me this question, right? Why all of a sudden am I being asked to replace the banking information for this large account that's going to have, multi-million dollars? Does he not know that it will be immediately flagged? So stuff like that, you have to be a little bit more careful. AI has just made it so much more necessary to have that human verification element, not rely on technology.
Yeah. A close relative to deepfakes, AI-driven malware in this example here. So you can utilize AI to generate, lots of different text. You can ask AI to generate a tutorial on a particular topic. So in this example here, it's, criminals that basically used AI to generate a training video on something specific within Adobe Photoshop. Even just create a fictitious image, like you can use AI and create a unique human individual and have them as the speaker on this tutorial. Everything looks very legitimate, and the content actually is legitimate. It is, this self-help content. However, the only difference here is that they add in one other element and they say, hey, thanks so much for attending this video. And as a thank you, we're going to give you a free download to download Adobe Photoshop for, free 30-day or 60 or 90-day, whatever the case is. Some compelling download, and people download it and then all of a sudden get infected with malware. So again, it doesn't matter how they're utilizing almost a legitimate source to mask the illegitimate download. So again, anytime you're downloading, clicking on a link, you have to be vigilant. Same thing with QR codes. If you've been to any kind of trade show recently, you'll see like every vendor's booth is going to have a QR code with either information or a way to enter a draw, something like that. And how do we access these QR codes? We use our cell phones. And when you scan the QR code, it comes up, really small with whatever the link is. And then you obviously click on the link. But I mean, the text is very, very small. Half the time, we're probably not even reading what the link is when we scan that QR code. We're just taking for granted that we just saw a sign and we're thinking that whatever it is 100% related to whatever sign we're looking at. I'm assuming in most trade shows, it's all going to be legitimate. However, it could get you used to the fact of scanning QR codes and thinking that they're all legit. You could see a poster walking down the street that could have a malicious code on there, or the website could have a link, or it could start a download. Again, you can't just take for granted that some of these things
are. Add to that, it's not always the fact that, you see a poster and that poster has a illicit QR code on it. Even on genuine things like, your parking meters that have that code, people print out their own QR codes and go stick it on top of a genuine QR code, right? Everything else is fine. It's only when on closer inspection, you see that it's a sticker on top of something else that you would even see it. I mean, from far away, if you're I'm just going to scan this QR code because I've always scanned this QR code on this meter in front of my house. This time around, it may actually be something else. So usually, I mean, all the QR code does, it's got text, right? That's what a barcode is. It's just text. If you know the URL, if you know the website, just go to that website. Don't rely on the QR code. Saves you 10 seconds to type it in.
Yeah.
It saves you a year of painful hassle to get your money back if you lose it.
Yep, 100%. And then the last trend, I mean, it's a service called Mamba, which is something that helps cyber criminals bypass multi-factor or two-factor authentication. So bypassing two-factor authentication, I've talked about it for the last few years, that there is ways around it, ways that people can manipulate you. Obviously, in order to bypass two-factor authentication, they have to trick you in some way first to going to an illegitimate website. Microsoft 365 has been a big target. So they create these websites with login screens that look exactly like the Microsoft login. So it looks legitimate. they have to trick you into going to an illegitimate website. So if you do go to the illegitimate website, first you're going to enter in your ID and password. Now the cyber criminal is watching you do all this and seeing your keystrokes. He's opening up the real Microsoft 365 webpage and typing in your credentials. So now everybody thinks, well, but I have two-factor authentication, so you need the code. How is the criminal going to get the code? Well, if you then get the notification for two-factor authentication and type a code into this fictitious website that the cyber criminal is looking at, now he can take that code, enter it into the legitimate Microsoft page, bang, zoom, now he's authenticated with your credentials and has access to your account. That's how it works. The Mamba piece of this and what's kind of new is that it's a cyber service in a box, basically, for criminals. So they don't even have to create this stuff themselves. It's a service that they can just pay a monthly fee for, have all the access, the written web pages, they'll host it for them on the dark web, everything in a box, all ready to go. So this is just another thing. Yeah, and we're not saying, oh, forget about two-factor authentication because it can be bypassed. Still, you have to do that. But we also have to be very vigilant about these phishing emails and making sure that we're going to legitimate sites and not clicking on something that we shouldn't. So I mentioned part of the agenda today was going to be talking about some, myths that we see out there. So let's run through some of these. The first one, we're only worried about external cyber threats. So, internal cyber threats come in a couple of ways. Certainly there could be disgruntled employees that are going to act out on a business. Thankfully, that is the minority for the internal cyber threats, because the remainder of the internal cyber threats, a lot of the times, it's not malicious at all. It's just somebody that isn't as aware, clicks on something that they shouldn't, goes to a website that they shouldn't, isn't looking close enough at an email or an instruction or whatnot, isn't putting those double checks in place. Myth number 2, we hear this all the time. My business is too small to be a target. Look, I'm here to tell you that every business is being targeted. And certainly there's cyber criminals and cyber crime organizations that are only targeting very, very big fish. But it's just like anything. It's like having a business trying to go after extremely large accounts. It takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more resources, and there's no guarantees. And you can put in a lot of work and not get anything out of it. Whereas if you go for smaller accounts or go to try and, fish smaller businesses, a lot of the times, smaller businesses have this kind of a thought process that, hey, we're too small. Who's going after us? We don't have to worry about it. Yeah, we don't have to do cyber training for our people. It's probably okay. That's the kind of attitude that can get you in trouble. And cyber criminals don't care. They use a lot of automation, and they're okay making, smaller amounts more often than going after one big fish. In a lot of ways, it's a lot easier for them to use that kind of automation. Number 3, antivirus software or any tool in general is enough. And like just having tools and just trying to rest on the laurels of just tools or taking a set it and forget it attitude isn't, it's definitely not the right thought process. You guys have anything to add here?
I mean, as it says below, cybersecurity being a multi-layered approach, that's both, multi-layer in the tools, the security tools that you use, also in the hygiene and the internal policies and procedures you put in place. So There's no silver bullet to cybersecurity. It is really understanding where there's vulnerabilities and either putting tools and or the hygiene in those areas to harden all of those weak links, those weak points in it. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but really building a business with a culture of cybersecurity awareness and ownership so that it's everybody's responsibility to be looking out for cyber threats and really behaving where they're suspicious of everything that comes in from that's not a really well-known source or something they're expecting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, number 4, phishing scams are obvious and easy to spot. And as we've talked about, maybe 20 years ago they were. Now they're just getting harder and harder to spot.
Well, and AI's done a great job helping there.
Sure has. Number 5, more tools means better cybersecurity. We see this happening a lot in the industry, especially if somebody does have some sort of a breach or phishing incident or whatnot. The knee-jerk reaction is, oh, we need to get more tools in place. And adding more tools is going to make people feel more secure. Tools are great, 100% we need tools, but as Tyler was mentioning, it's really the hygiene around it. I love to use the analogy of like your house. We have a lot of tools in place to secure our house, like locks on the doors, locks on the windows, maybe even an alarm system, security cameras, and things like that. However, someone has to check to make sure when you're going to bed at night, hey, did we lock the door? If you don't lock the door, or if nobody checks that the door is locked, what if the door is open? Somebody could walk right in. Same thing with the alarm. Is the alarm, armed and ready to go? Or did anybody check it? Having that hygiene, cybersecurity and these tools are not set it and forget it. Somebody needs to look at configurations and settings on a regular basis. As much as technology is, bits and bytes and mechanical, it's also very organic. As you add users, take users away, as you install software, remove software, it changes the organics. It has to be looked at regularly.
Well, a great example that I'm sure everybody on this webinar has heard before is the story of somebody thinking they have a backup system in place until a catastrophe happens or they need to restore. Nobody was watching the backups. They think they're protected, go to do a recovery, and guess what? The backups haven't been working for the last 6 months, and nobody's been managing and monitoring those. So exactly the same concept here with all the cybersecurity tools, making sure they're configured properly. That they're not restricting people from being able to do their work is another important thing. People often forego putting cybersecurity tools in or layering them because they feel it's too restrictive and people can't get their work done. I mean, that's part of the tuning that needs to happen, the management and oversight to make sure that they are working and doing what they're supposed to do.
Yep. And the next one, cybersecurity is solely IT's responsibility. Look, IT can do so much. They can put the tools in place and try and come up with the majority of the security. However, as we've mentioned already, human error is also a big potential risk. So everybody, we have to take a team approach really when it comes to cybersecurity. Everybody has to have responsibility and skin in the game in order to keep a business safe.
Oh, there's just so many business decisions now involved in the cyber security posture that you have. IT's job responsibility really to make you aware of all the potential risks and strategies around mitigating those. But sometimes there's costs involved. Business decisions need to be made there. Sometimes there's policies, procedures that need to be developed and adhered to. Largely the business's responsibility. Even understanding work, the way people work in a business. We'll talk a little bit about geo-filtering coming up. But IT can't just necessarily go and restrict access to your systems from everywhere in the world except Canada without having that conversation, understanding, do people ever access the systems from outside Canada? So really that collaboration and then building the culture of cybersecurity awareness is going to come from the top down.
Yeah. Okay. Number 7, we don't need outside help with our cybersecurity. I mean, we see this time and again with especially smaller businesses, maybe that has one internal IT savvy person, and they feel, oh, I can install the antivirus myself, and hey, I can set up Microsoft 365 and emails for my people. And sure, somebody with a little knowledge can get things set up. But there is a little bit more to it when it comes to configurations, settings, and making sure that you actually have all the right tools in place and that it is covering off on everything. So at some point, outside help is necessary. Number 8, we're in the cloud, so we're safe. This is another one, like you're only as safe as whoever is providing that cloud service. There's a lot of businesses that have their systems and whatnot in private clouds. Let's say, a company like ours, an IT company, has their own private cloud. However, you are only as safe as the tools and means that they have in place. Even Microsoft. So we work a lot with Microsoft Azure with our clients. We have several clients that are hosted 100% in Azure. And Microsoft spends billions of dollars every year on IT security and securing Azure. However, they're securing the perimeter of Azure from hackers, breaking in from the out, brute force attacks and things like that from the outside. However, the interior of it and what we're providing for our clients, virtual servers and things like that, again, the security there is only as secure as the means that we put in place and the process and procedure we have in making sure that those are secure. So you have to go one step further if you are going into cloud services and making sure that you're checking to see, well, what kind of means is this company or this service provider providing from an IT security perspective? And don't be afraid to ask.
Mike, I think another great example there is with Microsoft Office 365, and by default, there's so much configuration required to harden that environment that it's not to say that it's not a secure environment, but it's by default there are vulnerabilities that need configuration and tuning and business decisions on how you use the platform, and that's really part of that collaboration. And just putting your email up in Microsoft 365 doesn't mean you're secure. We have a comprehensive list of ongoing alignments we do for our clients in 365 because of those vulnerabilities and because of the constant hardening that is required. Microsoft facilitates it. They provide all the tools, but by default, they're not all configured and set because it would interrupt the business if it's not configured and understood properly.
Of course. All right, moving on. Number 9, changing passwords frequently is enough. Obviously, with passwords, goes a bit further than that. We're not suggesting that you don't change your passwords regularly. That 100% has to happen. But the types of passwords, we don't want to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 change to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 the next time. You still need to structure your passwords properly. I know we all have probably fatigue when it comes to passwords, however many that we have to remember now, and the suggestion that, and it's a good one, that you shouldn't be reusing the same password for multiple sites. If you did ever get compromised in one, cyber criminals have a way to check your credentials against multiple different sites very quickly. So making sure that you have the proper length, combinations of capitals, lowercase, numbers, symbols, things like that. So there's a little bit more to it than just changing your password. Cybersecurity is too expensive. I think any, cybersecurity plan and policy within your company has to start with what is it that you have you're trying to protect, and also looking at, what would the potential cost of a breach be on your business? Would it cost you in reputation? Could it possibly cost you in dollars and cents? Those are the things that we're trying to safeguard. So before you would say cybersecurity is too expensive, you have to look at the alternative and see, well, what would it cost you on the other side if you did get breached?
Downtime. I mean, if data is exfiltrated and exposed, sensitive client information, your trade secrets, if that data gets stolen, exfiltrated, and available on the web, what does that impact your business and potentially the cost of lost clients or lost trade secrets, all those other things.
Yep. And sort of related, cybersecurity is a one-time investment. We'll say it over and over again. It's definitely not a set it and forget it. It's also not a one point into, we hear this from lots of businesses. All I need is an audit. I just want to do an audit and that'll tell me where I'm at. Well, if you did an audit 3 years ago, a lot of people still think, oh, I'm good. I did the audit 2 or 3 years ago. Well, a lot can change. As I mentioned earlier, IT and tech systems are organic as well. As time changes, things change, settings, configuration, applications, users, you name it. So you can't just take one point in time. It has to be an ongoing assessment, ongoing audit. There has to be some sort of process in place. We have it within our business and we do it for our clients regularly, but you should act and make sure whoever is managing your IT has that kind of proactive process in place to look at things, measure, look at settings, configurations, etc. And then this one, compliance equals security. An interesting example here is with cyber insurance. To qualify for cyber insurance, these providers send you out a questionnaire that you have to fill out. And even if you are in compliance to cover off for cyber insurance, doesn't mean that you're 100% secure. All they are doing is the very, very baseline requirements that they know is probably going to combat against the bulk of breaches and things like that. But by no means is it covering off on everything related to your security.
I think another part of that, in addition to, I think cyber insurance is kind of forcing a lot of people to be compliant with their policies, but a lot of different people, the our clients that I meet, have to be in compliance either with government regulations or in compliance with their own clients, right, who have a strict policy. But example is, you put it on your policy, you can only share files and receive files in a certain way and have everybody sign it, but they are sharing, picking up their son's USB key from home and then copying files onto that. Compliance, I think it goes beyond just signing a document and agreeing to, yes, I'll work this way, and then continuing to go on working the way that you always have, the unsafe way. That's also a big concern right now, right? Just because you get that check mark, your cyber insurance gives you a check mark, yes, you're compliant, you've got this great policy about sharing files, your client says you're compliant, the government says you're compliant because you have this policy, but your users continue to behave the way that they've always behaved. That doesn't help, right? So it needs to go beyond compliance. It needs to be an actual check of how people are doing it.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely good. So here's just some of the items and basic items for helping protect your business. Tyler, you want to run through some of these?
Yeah, sure. Talking about having a tool stack and the importance of different layering of security tools. Again, hygiene playing a very important role in all of this, but looking at the tools, managed EDR, XDR, that's really a much more advanced type of antivirus malware protection. Uses AI, machine learning to detect threats rather than virus definitions, known virus definitions. We talked about security awareness training. That should be something that's continuous, maybe every quarter within your business, and then testing users. They need to be reminded of, what are current threats looking like, tested to make sure they're not interacting with fraudulent types of emails. And if they are, make sure to go back and train them on that. Vulnerability assessments, pen testing. This is something, Mike was kind of talking about a moment ago, where just this ongoing assessment, really understanding where there are vulnerabilities in the environment, understanding how hackers could potentially get into your environment, and then hardening all of those areas. Encrypting laptops, normally best practice is to avoid keeping data on laptops. If you do have data local on a laptop, though, making sure it's encrypted in case you lose it or it's stolen. Don't want to have any sensitive information there that could be stolen. Multi-factor authentication with code verification, and in addition to a push approval, just an absolute must on all your systems, making sure you have that in place. Touched on earlier a little bit about geo-blocking. So this is really, where you're setting the regions in the world that are allowed to log in. They still would need credentials. They'd still need multi-factor authentication, but it only makes sense to allow people to log in from the region that you have people working. If that's Canada, only allow logins from Canada with all those other, login and authentication methods. Usually this will require a policy internally to understand when somebody's traveling that you're going to lift the restriction for them temporarily while they're traveling overseas. But this is a great safeguard against most attacks that come in from outside Canada and the US. And then using a monitoring service, a SOC and a SIEM for 24/7 monitoring of your systems. What this will do is it will identify if somebody's trying to hack into the system. So if somebody's repeatedly trying to brute force onto a firewall, into your email accounts, anything like that, this type of monitoring will pick that up and identify it. It's also logging all of the activities in the back. So you'll usually get, maybe a 1 year or more amount of retention. So if something did happen, wasn't recognized right away, or even if it was, there's some forensics behind it that either the insurance or a forensic team can look into it to understand when the breach happened, how it happened, and have all of that data.
Yeah, that's all very good things. And I mean, obviously there's even more beyond this, but this is a great starting point for sure. So last piece here, just 10 steps. We're kind of coming up against the end of time here.
Yeah, we've got a few questions too, Mike. So we've got about 4 questions we should look at.
So I'm just going to zip through this quick. And certainly if anybody has questions about this, I think we even have a handout that we can send to you related to this, but just super quick, steps for building a cyber smart team. Training your team, making sure you're going through this cyber awareness training, encouraging open communication regarding it, leading by example, leading from the top down. If you are a leader, an owner, a manager, making sure that you're not bypassing what should be regular security measures like two-factor authentication. We've seen that with organizations where the owner doesn't want to be bothered, or a higher level manager doesn't want to be bothered with two-factor authentication, but they're going to make all their other people in the business. Yeah, definitely want to lead by example. Establishing clear guidelines and policy around cybersecurity, recognizing when somebody has good practices, making it personal for everybody. Everybody should have skin in the game. And as we mentioned before, it's not just IT's responsible, it's everybody's responsibility. Testing your team's readiness, both educating them, but also sending them, simulated campaigns to test to see who may or may not click on something they shouldn't. Encouraging employees to speak up, helping each employee own their own role and responsibility within cybersecurity. And the last one, uniting your team in a shared responsibility, getting everybody on board with the cyber plan. So I apologize for having to run through those so quick, but I just want to make sure that we do have time. Just a couple of resources quickly. I always put this one up here. It's the Government of Canada's cyber.gc.ca. If you Google for cyber information, there's a lot of cyber, tool providers and things like that. That'll be very self-serving. I think the government is pretty impartial when it comes to it, and it'll just give you good advice.
Yeah, and that one, Mike, is a good answer to one of the questions: is how do we make sure we comply with cybersecurity standards with these new AI threats around? So this is a great resource, this cyber.gc.ca. It's got a set of standards, kind of taking a hybrid approach from many of the different security structured standards out there, and making it a little more easier to implement within a business. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah. And then also you can utilize our site. We do try and put a lot of content out on our blog and webinars and things like that. So you can utilize that as a resource. Okay.
Yeah, here's a good question that is a very common form of attack or just breach. How to identify inbound emails coming from a customer supplier whose identity has been compromised? I mean, this is probably one of the most common things we see in terms of wire fraud, the wire transfer fraud and things like that. Ridgewan, any feedback on how to identify those?
I mean, obviously, the way the entire content of this webinar with AI, it's becoming more and more difficult to identify this situation is similar. Just like a deepfake, the AI can be taught to mimic a person's email writing style. This is more of a non-technical approach to it, which is understanding red flags, understanding what is abnormal for this person to be sending me. Why would this person ask me this question? If it smells funny, looks funny, it probably is funny.
If they're ever asking for you to change banking transfer information, anything like that, right, Ridgewan?
Exactly. And anything that, that's not normal, that's not typical for that specific person to do, you should have a means of verifying with them. If you do large financial transactions, have an agreed upon code. Hey, if I'm ever suspicious, this is what I will say to you. Don't put it in an email. Never put it anywhere where technology has access to it. In a very low tech method. For the longest time, the FBI used to still use carrier pigeons even when they were obsolete because they did not trust the electronics. If this is almost going that way, where you have a method of verification, any kind of financial transaction, let's say just whatever, it's $5,000 and plus, needs another way of verification. You need to put those in. With these sophisticated attacks, yes, spam filters are getting more modernized. They have AI built into them, but the criminals also have AI, so they are also bypassing. I've seen recent attacks where all the security information that is needed is carried in what we call an email header. And that email header was perfect. Like there was nothing. I scanned it up and down, couldn't find anything. Took me a minute to figure out what the hack was. That person, that hacker was nowhere in the email did it say reply back to me. Everything that was needed for the hack to work was in the body of that email. That hacker, if they had replied back to the email, the victim, they would have actually replied back to the actual person. It was manufactured in that way. The header had all the right information. No spam filter would have caught it. The reason the spam filter is able to catch it is because the hacker needs the ability for that email to be routed back to them. Those are the signs that the spam filters and all the AI tools that we have pick in. But if the hacker is not expecting you to reply back to them, they can pretty much mimic an actual email and all spam filters will let it through. They can show, it can come as the IP of Microsoft because you have a 365. It can have the header of a Microsoft with all your signatures on all your remarks, everything checking, passes through. The body is the problem. That's where the second verification is very necessary. You need to understand, okay, this person, why are they asking me to do this? Why is this person telling me to send them a gift card? Why, is the banking information changing? We've not talked about it. We've not discussed it. What is the need to change the banking information all of a sudden? Those are things that really you have to ask. And that is the way that to beat this is to be cautious. Understand that no, an email, just because it came from the email address you've always talked to, doesn't mean that somebody hasn't taken over this conversation. Next question.
Next one, will AI eventually take over cybersecurity, or will human oversight still be needed?
Oh, well, the war of AI. This sounds like a Terminator question. I mean, I can't speak for the future, but where it stands today, AI is not sentient. AI is whatever you make of it. AI is being used for good. AI is being used for bad. It needs the human input to learn, to educate itself, and to have a path direction. I mean, if you I don't know if they teach this in biology here, but AI kind of works the same way. If you could see the scan, it's red in color. How a child learns this is there are something in the brain we call synapses, and you look at it and it says this red color. It makes a small connection. Every time you tell the child that this is the color red and the sound pronunciation red, it creates synapses around it to a point where now it is confident. It is so big that the synapse says, okay, this color is red. If I start teaching the child that this is purple and has no interaction with anybody else, the child is going to learn that this color is purple. AI works the same way. It's weights. It's fuzzy logic is what it's called. It just weights stuff, right? The more you tell it that this is right and that is wrong, the more it will learn from you. So it is still human input that tells it what is right, what is wrong, right? It's the example that Mike showed. AI, ChatGPT was taught that cyber criminals will ask you to create phishing emails. You should not be creating phishing emails. We had to confuse it. It had to be a human that confused it. AI won't be confusing AI. At least not today. I can't speak for the future, but that's how it is today.
Yeah.
Go through a couple more quickly here. How can we make our entire team aware of these AI threats and how to spot them?
Oh, yeah.
Education, ongoing.
Obvious. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is education. It is phishing emails. I always tell these people when they fight back and say, oh, no, once a month or even to the extreme of getting a phishing test simulation done once a week is too much, right? My people are getting frustrated. They don't want to interact with that email anymore. See, that's great. If somebody thinks that my company has sent me a test phishing email, they're going to test me, and then they're going to call me out when I click on it. I'm not going to interact with it. What is wrong with it if that user does not interact with an actual hacker's email thinking this is the company's test and they're going to call me out on it? Like, your goal is achieved. So that constant training, the constant testing, that's how you do it, right? If the top, I rather that example, you will lead by example. If the partner or the owner of the company wants to be exempted from this will never work. Like, it has to be them example. Like, I'm ready to watch a 15-minute, 20-minute video. Nobody in this company should have an excuse for being too busy. Once a month, watch a 20-minute video, you can spare that. But if the partners or the owners don't want to be exempted from it, then the director would want to be exempted from it, then the VP would want to be exempted from it, then the manager would want to be exempted from it, then your user, like, why the hell should I do it if all the big guys don't get to do it? So it's not important enough.
Building that culture from
the
top down
for us. Exactly.
Culture of security, whereas it's always ironic when it's the CEO asking to be exempt from MFA because it's too cumbersome to work through, and they're the number one target that hackers are going after.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just doesn't, it's not the CEO that's unprotected. Everybody under him thinks it's not important enough. If it's not good for the CEO, it's not, it's not important enough for us.
Companies or industries most at risk. I know everybody is, but there's probably stats. I know professional industries like legal, accounting, and stuff are prime targets. Which one others?
Essentially anybody who has access to financial information or personally identifiable information, because data has become the new currency. Anybody who holds data of some other entity is a prime target now. Before it wasn't the case, like money was the only thing that people were after. Right now, data is as valuable as gold.
All right. Great. Thank you. I guess that's going to wrap it up. We're 5 minutes past the hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thank you,
I'm really
everybody,
going through all the
for
questions.
yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Hope you got something out of it. And as we mentioned before, if there was, there's the contact information, inquiries@pacetechnical.com. If you wanted to shoot us an email, if you'd like to have a conversation, or if there's something that came up, you didn't get a chance to ask a question or wanted to have a private consultation, please get in touch with us. But outside of that, hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Okay, bye now.